not sure what. Ow, my foot. What the fuck did you even do that? You're such an idiot.
Despite their grief, they completed her final rites. The memory of the flight will always stay with them. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Had the elephant remained in its natural habitat? Would Maya still be alive?
That was dumb.
The answers may never be clear, but one thing is certain.
That was stupid.
This event highlights the growing tension between humans and wildlife. The future of elephants depends on how humans choose to interact with nature. Without action, more people and animals will suffer similar fates. The balance between conservation and human expansion is fragile, and if things don't change, tragedies like Maya's may become even more frequent. The question remains, why did the elephant return? Was it driven by instinct, memory, or something beyond human understanding? The mystery may never be solved, but one thing is certain. No one in Rapel Village will ever forget this moment. On July 21st, 2022, in Karmeh Yosef, a village near Tel Aviv, Israel, a pool party took a shocking turn when the ground beneath a private swimming pool suddenly gave way. A massive sinkhole opened at the bottom of the pool, leading to the tragic death of 32-year-old Klil Kimhi and injuring another guest. Kimhi, a marketing professional from Tel Aviv, was attending a company party at a private villa. Around 50 people were at the event, but only 6 were in the pool when the unexpected disaster struck. It was meant to be a fun and relaxing evening, but in an instant, everything changed. Security footage captured the terrifying moment. Guests were floating on inflatable toys when suddenly the water began draining rapidly. Within seconds, a giant hole formed, sucking down the water, pool floats, and anything nearby. The pool floor collapsed, leaving the area unstable. Kimmy and another man, 34, were pulled into the hole. While the second man managed to escape with minor injuries, Kimmy was not as fortunate. He vanished into the vortex, unable to grab anything. Witnesses initially thought it was some kind of joke until they realized the ground had truly disappeared beneath them. Emergency responders arrived quickly, including Israeli firefighters and the Magen David Adom rescue team. However, the unstable ground made the rescue operation dangerous. The sinkhole was about 43 feet deep, and there was a real risk it could collapse further. To prevent more accidents, rescue teams stabilized the area before entering. For hours, rescuers carefully navigated the underground tunnel with cameras attached to their helmets. After about 4 hours, they found Kim Hai's lifeless body at the end of a 49-foot passage. Officials later suggested that he either suffered fatal injuries from the fall or was trapped under debris. The man who survived had slipped near the sinkhole's edge but managed to climb out before getting completely pulled in. He suffered minor leg injuries and was treated at the scene before being taken to the hospital. The sinkhole had formed so suddenly that no one had time to react. Within moments, the pool was empty, leaving guests in shock. Witnesses described the horror of watching a friend disappear underground without a chance to help him. Investigators investigated the cause of the collapse and discovered a troubling detail. The pool had been built without proper permits. Authorities investigated whether the villa's owners had violated safety regulations. The couple, both in their 60s, were arrested for suspected negligence and placed under house arrest, while officials continued their inquiry. Experts determined the pool had serious structural flaws that may have led to the disaster. The collapse was likely possibly due to poor construction or drainage issues. If the pool had been properly inspected, the hidden dangers might have been detected before tragedy struck. This incident raises serious concerns about unauthorized construction and its potential risks. In some areas, sinkholes form naturally when water erodes rock beneath the surface, creating empty spaces underground. However, human activities, such as improper building practices, can also contribute to these collapses. In this case, failing to assess the land before construction may have played a critical role in the disaster. What if the pool had been legally approved? What if the property owners had followed safety procedures? Could this tragedy have been avoided? These questions remain unanswered, but they highlight the importance of ensuring structures meet safety standards before use. The loss of Klil Kimhi was devastating for his family friends, and colleagues. What was supposed to be a day of celebration turned into an unthinkable nightmare. The ongoing investigation continues to shed light on what went wrong, but one thing is clear. When safety regulations are ignored, lives are put at risk. It was June 18, 2017, in Mulhouse, France. Rebecca Berger, a 33-year-old fitness blogger, was preparing a simple whipped cream treat at home. Known for her love of fitness, travel, and sharing her life online, Rebecca has gained over 200,000 followers on Instagram and Facebook. She was full of life and energy, inspiring people with her workouts and positive attitude. But on this ordinary day, a tragic accident took her life in an instant. Rebecca was using a whipped cream dispenser when the device exploded. The container burst under pressure despite being properly sealed, sending metal parts flying. One piece struck her chest with such force that it triggered a heart attack. Paramedics arrived quickly and revived her, but the damage was too severe. She was taken to the hospital, where she passed away the following day. This was not just a rare accident. It resulted from a long-standing safety issue that had been ignored for years. Faulty whipped cream dispensers, also known as cream siphons, had been causing injuries for some time. Consumer groups had warned about the risks, but defective products continued to be sold. The dispenser that caused Rebecca's death was not the first to malfunction, and it would not be the last. Rebecca's family was devastated. Soon after her passing, they took to social media to inform her followers about what had happened. Along with their message, they posted a picture of the exact device that had caused her injury. They urged people to stop using these dispensers, warning that thousands of dangerous models were still circulating. They explained that Rebecca had used the product correctly. It had simply failed without warning. The news of her passing sent shockwaves through social media. Fans who had followed her fitness journey couldn't believe it. Many described her as an inspiration, a role model, and a person full of energy. The fitness brand Women's Best, which Rebecca had worked with, posted a heartfelt tribute, calling her a beautiful soul and a valued friend. Shockingly, Rebecca's death was not the first caused by an exploding cream siphon. French consumer organizations had been sounding the alarm for years. According to the consumer magazine 60 Million de Consommateurs, at least 60 similar incidents have been reported. Some people suffered broken teeth, others had fractured ribs, and in one case, a person barely survived after being struck in the chest by flying metal parts. The dispenser that failed Rebecca had been recalled years earlier. The manufacturer, Ardtime, pulled the product from the market in 2013 after reports of explosions. However, many units had already been sold, and not all customers were informed. As a result, defective dispensers remained in people's homes, waiting for an unsuspecting user. The issue went beyond one company. 2014, France's National Consumer Institute, or INC, warned about multiple whipped cream dispensers. Many had weak plastic caps that could not handle the pressure, making them prone to bursting. While most incidents resulted in injuries, Rebecca's was the first known fatality. Her case prompted renewed investigations. French authorities investigated whether these devices had been properly tested before being sold. They also wanted to determine if more could have been done to alert the public. The prosecutor's office in Mulhouse opened an inquiry to see if the manufacturer had acted responsibly or if the tragedy could have been prevented. In one of her last Instagram posts, Rebecca shared a message about appreciating life. She wrote about her future travels and upcoming projects and the importance of reflecting on her achievements. A beautiful day has come to an end. There are a lot of trips coming and new projects. I realized I should sit still and reflect on everything I've already accomplished and what I'm about to experience. Life is good. But what if Rebecca had known about the risks of her kitchen tool? Would her life have been saved if recalls had been better publicized? And how many other products have hidden dangers? Rebecca's story serves as a reminder always to be cautious about the products we use. Her family's decision to share her story helped spread awareness about defective kitchen devices, urging people to check their homes for potential risks. While nothing can bring her back, her tragic passing shed light on a problem that had been ignored for far too long. On October 28, 2023, the Sheffield Steelers faced off against the Nottingham Panthers at Sheffield's Utilita Arena. The stadium buzzed with energy as 8,000 fans watched the heated match, unaware that the night would end in tragedy. Adam Johnson, a 29-year-old American ice hockey player, was in his first season with the Nottingham Panthers. A talented forward, he had previously played for the Pittsburgh Penguins in the National Hockey League before continuing his career in European leagues. But what was supposed to be another exciting game turned into a heartbreaking event. During the second period, Johnson collided with Sheffield Steelers defenseman Matt Petgrave as both players raced for control of the puck. In the chaos, Petgrave's skate lifted off the ice, and as he fell, his blade struck Johnson's neck. Johnson immediately tried to skate toward the bench, but the injury was severe. Blood quickly pooled on the ice, and teammates rushed to shield him from the crowd. Medics arrived within moments, working desperately to stop the bleeding. Fans, initially confused, soon realized the gravity of the situation. The game was halted, and players were ushered off the ice. Johnson was rushed to Sheffield's Northern General Hospital, but despite medical efforts, he did not survive. His sudden passing devastated the hockey community, leaving teammates, fans, and loved ones in mourning. His death raised immediate concerns about...
So that can kill you, that kind of injury, because even the airline army, they call it crowd army. Oops.
Player safety, particularly the lack of required neck protection in professional leagues. While neck guards have been recommended, they were not mandatory in the Elite Ice Hockey League, or EIHL, where Johnson played. In response to the tragedy, the EIHL suspended all games scheduled for the following day. Across the hockey world, tributes poured in. Fans gathered outside the arena to leave flowers, jerseys, and heartfelt messages. His team, the Nottingham Panthers, retired his number 47 jersey in December 2023 to honor his memory. The incident also sparked an official investigation. South Yorkshire police arrested a man on suspicion of manslaughter, though he was later released on bail. Authorities, including the Crown Prosecution Service, continued to examine the circumstances of Johnson's death, but details remained limited. A senior coroner, Tanika Rawdon, issued a report urging hockey organizations to mandate neck guards to prevent similar incidents. In response, the English Ice Hockey Association, or EIHA, implemented a rule requiring neck protection in lower-tier leagues starting in 2024. However, the EIHL did not immediately enforce the same rule. Instead, it strongly encouraged players to wear guards without making them mandatory. Meanwhile, leagues outside the UK also took action. Several National Hockey League and American Hockey League players, including Anze Kopitar and Tyler Bertuzzi, began wearing neck guards voluntarily. USA Hockey introduced a policy requiring players under 18 and on-ice officials to wear neck protection starting in 2024. The American Hockey League soon followed with a similar mandate. The aftermath of Johnson's passing extended beyond rule changes. His family and teammates were left grieving while navigating the complexities of an ongoing legal investigation. By early 2024, the man arrested for the incident was re-bailed until April, with no formal charges filed. The tragedy also deeply affected Matt Petgrave, the player involved in the collision. Despite scrutiny, he maintained that the incident was an accident. Later, he launched a crowdfunding campaign to cover legal costs while awaiting the investigation's results. As the hockey world mourned, questions remained. Could better safety measures have prevented this? Would mandatory neck protection have made a difference? Johnson's passing reignited discussions about player safety in professional ice hockey, an issue that had long been debated but never fully addressed. For now, his legacy lives on, not only in the hearts of his loved ones, but also in the changes his passing has inspired. The push for stronger safety protocols may help protect future players from similar tragedies, ensuring that Johnson's impact on the sport is never forgotten.
Because my roller skates are the ones that shoes with wheels. My roller blades,
It was April
blades
2nd,
and they can be sharp.
2021 in Dublin, Ireland. 8-year-old Luke Ramon Harper, a boy with autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder,
That's
was
ADHD.
playing upstairs in his home on Clonlara Road. Just a week earlier, his family had celebrated his birthday with balloons, decorations in Dublin, Ireland. 8-year-old Luke Ramon Harper, a boy with autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, was playing upstairs in his home on Clonlara Road. Just a week earlier, playing upstairs in his a boy with autism and 8-year-old Luke Ramon Harper, a boy with autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, was playing upstairs in his home on Clonlara Road. Just a week earlier, his family had celebrated his birthday with balloons, decorations, and laughter. Among the decorations was a large helium-filled balloon shaped like 8. But what had once been a symbol of joy would soon lead to an unexpected and devastating turn of events. Earlier that day, Luke had been quietly watching YouTube videos. When his parents, Hillary McSweeney and Martin Harper, called him and his sister for dinner, he didn't respond. At first, they thought he was just distracted. But as time passed and he still didn't come downstairs, Hillary went to check on him. Nothing could have prepared her for what she saw. Luke was lying face down on the floor, completely unresponsive, with the deflated number 8 balloon covering his head.
What?
Panic set in as she rushed to remove it, but his small body was limp. In desperation, she carried him outside, hoping the fresh air would help, while Martin joined her in performing chest compressions. They did everything they could while waiting for emergency services to arrive. When paramedics arrived, they worked on Luke long before rushing him to Temple Street Children's Hospital. Hillary could sense that things were serious. Doctors tried everything, but the damage had already been done. The helium commonly used at parties had deprived Luke's brain of oxygen.
Oh no.
After taking a lock of his hair and handprints as mementos the next day, his parents said their final goodbyes. At 3:52 p.m., Luke passed away, leaving an unbearable void in their lives. Hillary shared her heartbreak with the Dublin District Coroner's Court at the inquest. She explained that Luke had always loved helium balloons at his birthday parties, and they had never seen them as dangerous. He had never tried to put one over his head before, which made the accident even more shocking. Martin added that they believed Luke was simply trying to re-inflate the balloon. While older kids sometimes inhale helium to create funny voices, young children like Luke don't usually consider it risky. However, just a small amount of helium can be dangerous.
Yeah.
The post-mortem confirmed that he lost consciousness quickly due to a lack of oxygen, which led to cardiac arrest. Dr. Crona Gallagher, the coroner, stated that Luke's passing was caused by inhaling helium, not the balloon itself. It appeared he had been unaware of what was happening and lost consciousness before he could ask for help. She described it as an insurmountable injury and ruled it an accidental death. Luke's parents emphasized that they could never have predicted this tragedy. There were no warning signs, and they had never considered helium balloons a potential danger. Hillary called it a freak accident, and hoped that sharing their story would help other families avoid the same pain. While Dr. Gallagher didn't suggest banning helium balloons, she encouraged families to be more cautious, especially with young children. Even a small amount of the gas can cause serious harm. Luke's parents urged others to be extra careful and to dispose of deflated balloons properly. They didn't want anyone else to go through what they had experienced. In the weeks after Luke's passing, Hillary and Martin spread awareness about the risks of helium. They hoped that telling their story could prevent another child's life from being cut short. When you're done with them, just make sure to throw them away properly, Martin said. Helium balloons are a common sight at parties, bringing fun and excitement. But for Luke's family, one simple balloon instantly changed everything.
Just use on the balloon. You would have probably found out about the rapid brain damage because it was really very quickly. It passed out very quickly. So there was no sign on it. And he tried to take the balloon off because it passed out before he could even take it off. By the time they found him, it was too late. They had already suffered permanent brain damage. Due to all his years. It was like, there's a memento.
Some deaths seem to have clear answers at first, but as the evidence comes together, the story shifts into something far more unsettling. Lies are exposed, secrets surface, and what seems simple turns into something almost unbelievable. In this video, we'll explore 5 real cases of disturbing deaths that were solved with shocking and unexpected twists. Stories that prove the truth can be stranger than anything imagined. It was May 2nd, 2001 in Chevy Chase, Maryland. 50-year-old Leslie Preer, who worked in advertising production, didn't show up for her job. She was always punctual, so when she missed an entire morning without calling, her coworkers grew concerned. One of them called her husband, Carl Preer. Carl had last seen Leslie at around 7:45 that morning, and everything seemed fine. But the call worried him, so he and the coworker drove to the house. When they walked inside, they were met with a disturbing sight. Blood was visible in the foyer. Carl searched frantically, calling out for his wife. Upstairs, they found her body. She had clear signs of trauma, and there was evidence of a violent struggle. Yet there was no forced entry. The neighborhood was quiet and rarely saw crime. Police had never even been called to the Preer house before. The scene was brutal. Blood was found throughout the home, especially in the upstairs bedroom. The autopsy later showed Leslie had died from blunt force injuries during the struggle. Under her fingernails, investigators found DNA. She had fought back. But in 2001, there were no matches in the database. The case quickly went cold. At that time, Leslie's teenage daughter, Lauren, was dating a man named Eugene Bligor. He was 21, only a few years older, and someone the family trusted. Their relationship had started when Lauren was 15, and both families were close. Nobody suspected him. After Leslie's funeral, the case faded from public view. Police held on to the evidence, but without leads, it sat unsolved. Lauren spent the next 20 years not knowing who had been responsible. In 2022, Montgomery County Police began reopening cold cases using forensic genealogy. Instead of looking only for direct DNA matches, this method used partial matches from genealogy databases, tracing distant relatives and building family trees. Detectives submitted DNA from the 2001 crime scene. The results came back with a distant match in Romania. From there, investigators traced the family tree until one name stood out: Eugene Bligor. It shocked investigators. He wasn't just a name. He had been inside the Preer home, had dated Lauren, and had known Leslie well. Even worse, his DNA wasn't found in just one place. It was throughout the house, including under Leslie's fingernails. She had scratched him during the fight, leaving behind undeniable evidence. To be certain, investigators followed him discreetly. At an airport screening, he was given a water bottle. Once discarded, it was tested. The DNA matched. On June 18, 2024, the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force arrested Bligor in Washington, D.C. He was 44, living quietly and working in real estate. His co-workers described him as calm and positive. Nobody believed he could have been involved. For Lauren, the news was crushing. She told Fox 5 that she had run into Gligor just a year earlier at a restaurant. They had spoken casually. Nothing about him seemed unusual. Learning he had been the one responsible left her stunned. There was never a clear motive. Police said Gligor had been a troubled teen, but nothing connected him directly to such violence. To this day, no explanation has been given. What made the betrayal worse was the lack of forced entry. Leslie likely let him in willingly, not realizing the danger. The case became historic for Maryland. It was the first solved through forensic genealogy in the state. Investigators said the work was long and difficult, but it brought resolution after 23 years. Gligor was charged with first-degree murder, later reduced to second-degree. He pleaded guilty in 2025. His sentencing is scheduled for August 28th, with a maximum penalty of 30 years. For the Preer family, justice had finally come. But the man responsible had been in plain sight for decades. Once welcomed into their home, later seen as a trusted face, nobody imagined he was the one who had taken everything from them.
Bitty, 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 bitty. Mom, just poo, 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 poo. Alexander, the walks away, box screen. Mom, just so face of love. Piece of love. Boxer, husband in the garbage bin. Oh, fuck. She har Alexander hinten, och det Oregon, where are you going? What's this?
It was October 16, 1955, in Chicago, Illinois. 14-year-old Robert Peterson and his two friends, 13-year-old John Schussler and his younger brother, 11-year-old Anton, had a simple plan that Sunday. They were going downtown to see a Disney documentary called The African Lion at the Loop Theater on North State Street. The boys were close friends, well known in their neighborhood. John hoped to become a priest. Anton, going downtown? 15-year-old Robert Peter, Chicago, Illinois.
Like in 1955.
John Schussler and his younger brother, 11-year-old Anton, had a simple plan that Sunday. They were going downtown to see a Disney documentary called 15-year-old Robert Peterson and his two friends, 13-year-old John Schussler and his younger brother, 11-year-old Chicago, Illinois. 14-year-old Robert Peterson and his two friends, 13-year-old John Schussler and his younger brother, 11-year-old Anton, had a simple plan that Sunday. They were going downtown to see a Disney documentary called The African Lion at the Loop Theater on North State Street. The boys were close friends, well known in their neighborhood. John hoped to become a priest. Anton dreamed of being a veterinarian. And Robert loved bowling. They left home from Jefferson Park in the afternoon, planning to return before evening. But they never came back. When night came, their parents grew worried. Robert's father, Malcolm, went to the Gale Street police station to report them missing. A young detective, James Jack, had just finished his shift but stayed to help search. Alongside his partner, he combed the rainy streets of Chicago, but the boys were nowhere to be found. By the next day, the families retraced the boys' steps. They learned the boys had made it to the theater, and later to the Monte Cristo bowling alley on West Montrose Avenue, about 8 miles from downtown. After that, the trail ended. 2 days later, on October 18th, a man walking near Robinson Woods Forest Preserve spotted what looked like a body in a ditch. He called the police. What they found shocked the city. The bodies of Robert, John, and Anton were stacked in a shallow ditch. They had been stripped, gagged, tied, and strangled. Robert's body also showed 14 deep cuts to his head. No clothes or clear evidence was found. The scene was not secured, and reporters and officers trampled through it, destroying potential clues. Forensics in 1955 were limited, so investigators had little to work with. The case quickly became a heater case, a high-profile investigation under intense pressure. But despite tips such as screams heard at the nearby idle hour stables and tire tracks at the scene, the leads weren't properly followed. Months later, in May 1956, the stables burned down in what many suspected was arson meant to destroy evidence. The case then went cold. The tragedy also took a toll on the families. Just a month after losing his sons, Anton Sr. died of a heart attack. Detective Jack never forgot the case. Even as he grew older, he visited the boys' graves each year and later wrote a book, 3 Boys Missing. It wasn't until the 1990s that a new movement came. In 1994, federal agents investigating the disappearance of wealthy candy heiress Helen Brock began hearing the name Kenneth Hansen. Multiple people claimed Hansen had admitted to killing the 3 boys back in the 1950s. One informant recalled him warning that anyone who crossed him would end up like the Peterson boy. Hansen had worked at Idle Hour Stables in 1955 and lived near where the boys were last seen. He also had a past arson arrest in 1970, which helped agents obtain a warrant. In July 1994, Hansen was arrested and charged. Investigators believed he lured the boys while they were hitchhiking, promising to show them horses. At the stables, he tried to harm the younger 2, but Robert interrupted, leading to the violent cuts found on his body. Police believed Hansen then strangled all 3. Physical evidence suggested they had been inside a barn, with hay in their lungs and bindings consistent with stable ropes. Marks also matched the floor mats of a Packard station wagon, a car linked to Hansen and his associate, Silas Jane. Jane, a powerful figure in the horse world, allegedly ordered the barn fire to protect his reputation, not Hansen. In 1995, 40 years later, Hansen went on trial. Testimonies from people who said he had confessed over the years convinced the jury. He was sentenced to 200 to 300 years in prison. His conviction was overturned in 2000, but in a second trial in 2002, he was found guilty again and given life in prison. Hansen died in 2007 at age 74, never admitting guilt. For Detective Jack, who had carried the case his whole career, it brought some closure. But for the families, the pain of losing 3 young boys never faded. It was April 16, 1960, in McAllen, Texas. Irene Garza, a 25-year-old second-grade teacher, left her parents' home that Saturday evening. She was headed to Sacred Heart Catholic Church for confession. It was the night before Easter. Irene was admired in her community. She had been Miss All South Texas Sweetheart in 1958 and a homecoming queen at Pan American College. But more than her beauty, people knew her for her faith and her kindness. She worked with poor children in McAllen and was active in the Legion of Mary. That night, Irene never came home. At first, her parents thought she had stayed for the Easter Vigil, but by 3 a.m., with no sign of her, they reported her missing. What followed was the largest volunteer search ever seen in the Rio Grande Valley. Days later, her purse, shoe, and lace veil were found along a road. On April 21st, her body was discovered in a canal several miles away. The autopsy revealed she had been beaten, suffocated, and harmed while unconscious. Bruises marked her face, but the water had washed away most evidence. Near her body, investigators found a slide viewer with a black cord. It belonged to one man, Father John Bernard Fite. Fite was a 27-year-old visiting priest at Sacred Heart, the very church where Irene had gone that night. He was the last person known to have seen her alive. Parishioners later recalled strange things. Fite's confession line moved slowly, and he left the sanctuary several times. Other priests saw scratches on his hands after Easter Mass. Fite claimed he broke his glasses and cut himself climbing through a window. He even failed a polygraph, though results were reported as inconclusive. Behind the scenes, church officials urged police to leave him alone. In the 1960s, accusing a priest was almost unthinkable. The case went cold. Just weeks earlier, another woman, Maria America Guerra, had been attacked at a different church. Fite admitted being present but denied involvement. He was charged, but the trial ended with no decision. To avoid another, he pled no contest to aggravated assault and paid a $500 fine. After this, Fite was sent to a monastery in Missouri. A monk named Dale Taccini was told Fite had killed someone and needed counseling. Over time, Fite admitted to harming one woman and ending the life of another. Taccini stayed silent, believing it was not his place to tell authorities. Fite later moved to Jemez Springs, a treatment center for priests in New Mexico. He became a staff member, approving others for assignments, even priests who later harmed children. By the 1970s, Fite left the priesthood, married, moved to Phoenix, and lived quietly, volunteering for 17 years at a food charity. In 2002, more than 40 years later, Tacony finally came forward. Around the same time, another priest, Joseph O'Brien, admitted that Fite had confessed to ending Irene's life. Still, in 2004, a grand jury refused to indict after key witnesses weren't called. Irene's family refused to let the case die. Her relative, Nomi Sigler, pushed for answers for decades. In 2014, Ricardo Rodriguez ran for district attorney, promising to reopen the case. He won, and in 2015, the investigation resumed. In 2016, Fite was arrested in Arizona at age 83. Despite his poor health, his bond was set at $1 million. He pleaded not guilty, and the case dragged on. Finally, in November 2017, the trial began. Prosecutors laid out the evidence, the items near Irene's body, Fite's stories, the scratches, the failed polygraph, and his own confessions. They asked for 57 years, one for each year he had lived free. On December 7, 2017, Fite was found guilty. The next day, he was sentenced to life in prison. He died in 2020 at age 87. Nearly 60 years later, Irene Garza's family finally saw justice. The young teacher, beauty queen, and daughter who never came home was remembered, and the truth could no longer be buried. It was January 15, 1980 in Gresham, Oregon. 19-year-old Barbara Mae Tucker, a business major at Mount Hood Community College, was on her way to her evening class. Barbara was described as bright, kind, and full of energy. That night, however, she never made it to class. The next morning, students heading to campus found her body near a wooded area by a parking lot between Kane Road and the school. She was partially undressed, the weather was cold, and her injuries showed signs of a violent attack. The medical examiner later confirmed she had been attacked and beaten to death. From that moment, investigators treated the case as a homicide. Witnesses recalled strange events from that night. One person saw a woman with a bloody face running from the bushes, waving her arms for help. Another heard screams.
Wait a minute.
Someone else reported seeing two figures moving in the distance, while another spotted a man hiding near the parking lot. The evidence suggested Barbara had tried to fight back and escape, but no one reached her in time. Detectives searched for answers, but the case went cold. Physical evidence had been collected, including swabs from the autopsy. But in 1980, DNA technology didn't exist. With no suspect and no links to Barbara, investigators had little to go on. Her family refused to give up hope. Then, in 2000, a development came when the Oregon State Police Crime Lab was able to create a DNA profile from the preserved evidence. But when the profile was compared to the national database, there were no matches. The case stalled again. More than 2 decades later, in 2021, Parabon Nanolabs joined the investigation. The company uses DNA genealogy, comparing genetic information not only to criminal databases, but also to family trees. Cece Moore, Parabon's lead genealogist, said one detail stood out. The suspect's DNA strongly indicated red hair, the most certain result she had ever seen. That clue narrowed the search. Tracing family lines led more to Oregon, to a man named Robert Arthur Plimpton, then 56 years old, living in Troutdale. At the time of Barbara's death, Plimpton had been just 16. He had never been linked to Barbara, and his name had not come up during the original investigation. Detectives began quietly watching him. Eventually, they collected a piece of chewing gum he discarded. Testing showed the DNA was a match to the evidence from 1980. On June 8, 2021, police arrested Plimpton outside his home. He was charged with first-degree murder and several counts of second-degree murder. His trial began in 2024, overseen by Judge Amy Baggio. Prosecutors presented the DNA evidence and called witnesses from 1980, including one who claimed to see a man leading Barbara from the wooded area. Another recalled someone hiding in the bushes. Barbara's sisters, Alice Wan and Susan Pater, attended the trial after more than 40 years of waiting. The defense argued there were doubts. Witnesses had described a man closer to Barbara's height, around 6 feet, while Plimpton's records listed him at 5'9". They also argued her clothing had not been tested for DNA, which could have provided more context. The court also could not confirm whether the attack happened before or after her death, so those charges were not upheld. Still, on March 15, 2024, Judge Baggio ruled that the evidence proved Plimpton had fatally beaten Barbara. He was found guilty of first-degree murder and 4 counts of second-degree murder. He continues to claim innocence and plans to appeal. Barbara's family wept as the verdict was read. Alice said, "We're thrilled this was finally solved. Barbie was a special little girl, bright, bubbly, and caring." Susan added how hard it was knowing Plimpton had lived freely nearby for decades. Plimpton was sentenced in late 2024. He faces life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Barbara Tucker's case is now the oldest cold case solved in Gresham, Oregon, brought to an end by modern DNA genealogy and one discarded piece of gum. It was February 9th, 1979 in Southern California.
79.
17-year-old Esther Gonzalez left her parents' home in Beaumont and started walking to her sister's house in Banning. It was a short trip she had done many times before, but this time she never arrived. Esther was the fourth of 7 children. She was quiet, kind, and very close to her sister Elizabeth, who was just 1 year older. Since Esther didn't drive, she usually walked between family homes. That night, as she walked, someone was watching her. The next morning, February 10th, Riverside County Sheriff's deputies received a strange call. A man claimed he found a body on the side of Highway 243 near Banning, buried in snow. He gave little information and would not say whether the victim was male or female. Officers later described him as uncooperative. When deputies reached the area, they found Esther Gonzalez. She had been attacked and beaten before her body was left in the cold. There were no witnesses and no cameras. The only lead was the odd call from that unidentified man. Investigators worked for 5 days until they traced the caller. His name was Louis Randolph Randy Williamson, a Marine Corps veteran. His record showed no convictions for violent crimes, though there had been past accusations. In 1979, DNA testing was not available, so investigators had few tools. They asked Randy to take a polygraph test. He agreed and passed. That cleared him. Randy moved on with his life. Years later, he relocated to Florida, never facing charges for violent crimes. In 2014, he died of natural causes. For more than 4 decades, Esther's case went cold. Her family carried the pain and unanswered questions. In 2019, Riverside County formed a cold case unit. Esther's case stood out because investigators still had a biological sample recovered from her body. That sample had been entered into the National DNA database years earlier, but no match was ever found. Now technology had advanced. Detectives sent the evidence to Othram Inc., a lab in Texas that specialized in forensic genealogy, a method that compares DNA with large family databases to trace possible relatives of a suspect. Analysts compared the evidence and began piecing it together. The results pointed back to Randy Williamson. In 1979, he had only been cleared by a polygraph test, not DNA. Since he had passed away in Florida, investigators turned to his autopsy. A blood sample from his 2014 autopsy was still preserved. Florida officials worked with California detectives to release it for testing. When the analysis came back, it was conclusive. Randy Williamson's DNA matched the sample taken from Esther's body in 1979. The same man who called the police, pretending to be a witness, was the one responsible. He had stood face to face with investigators, passed their test, and then lived the next 35 years without consequence. Whether Randy knew Esther or chose her at random is still unclear. Although there had been earlier allegations of assault in his past, none led to convictions, meaning his DNA was never entered into law enforcement databases. That allowed him to go undetected for decades. In 2024, Riverside County officials confirmed Williamson was the prime suspect. Esther's family was informed immediately. Elizabeth Gonzalez, now 64, told reporters that while the family felt relief, there was sadness knowing Williamson would never face trial. Her brother Eddie thanked detectives publicly, saying the family finally had closure. Investigators added that forensic genealogy is now one of the strongest tools for solving old cases, especially when traditional evidence runs out. They are also asking the public if anyone else may have been harmed by Williamson. Esther Gonzalez was 17 years old when her life was taken during a walk she thought was safe. It took 45 years for the truth to be uncovered. But through decades of waiting, one thing never changed. She was never forgotten.
And then, yeah, the blood sample had been preserved during after his autopsy. And then his autopsy had been done, his blood sample had been preserved. Yeah, the DNA match. So now they call the police. It's also the one that they're doing it. But he would never be charged because he died of natural causes. Back in 2014. He never faced prison time or anything because, he never faced prison time because obviously he died of natural causes. Imagine living on the side of a mountain. I'm sure you get such a good view from there. Maybe, yeah, you're not wrong. Cool, because, that's why you don't want to fight around and mess around the courtroom. Because, that doesn't look well. That's not a good idea.
Join us as we uncover the details of 5 of the most unusual deaths ever recorded. Bizarre, tragic, and deeply unsettling. From freak accidents to unimaginable twists of fate, these true stories reveal how fragile and unpredictable life can truly be. As these cases prove, sometimes truth is more chilling than fiction. The case of Bernd Jürgen Brandes is among the most chilling ever recorded in modern Europe. It exposed a deeply troubling mix of psychological suffering, nauseating fantasies, and a disturbing form of consensual violence. Though not widely discussed in polite society, the events of March 9, 2001 remain an enduring example of the extremes of human behavior. Bernd Jürgen Brandes was born on January 19, 1958, in Berlin-Schöneberg. He was the only child of a wealthy family. Bernd had a privileged yet emotionally unstable upbringing. At just 5 years old, he lost his mother in a car crash. Raised primarily by au pairs after his father remarried, Bernd grew increasingly distant from his family. Psychologist Klaus Michael Meyer later suggested that his strained relationship with his stepmother and the unresolved trauma surrounding his mother's death contributed to a deteriorating mental state and atypical fantasies. Despite personal turmoil, Bernd was gifted academically. He held a prestigious position at Siemens, where he earned a 6-figure salary. But professional success masked deep interpersonal difficulties. His father severed ties after Bernd came out in 1990, a rejection that further isolated him. He experienced failed romantic relationships, including a broken engagement with a woman after an affair with a man. Though he continued to seek companionship from both men and women, those close to him described Bernd as emotionally unfulfilled and increasingly detached. Over time, his sexual interests evolved into troubling territory. Between 1995 and 2000, Bernd solicited male sex workers for acts involving pain, including requests to simulate mutilation. In early 2001, Bernd connected with someone who seemed to share his peculiar interests. Armin Maiwes, a 42-year-old computer technician from Rothenburg, had long harbored fantasies of killing and consuming another person. Bernd, suffering from his own internal torment and seeking castration, entered into a dialogue with Maiwes that grew increasingly explicit and detailed.
He was 84 when he died.
They exchanged messages almost daily, forming a disturbing pact. Maiwes would amputate Bernd and eventually take his life, all with consent. On March 9th, Bernd traveled from Berlin to Maiwes' home in Wusterberg. He had cleared out his belongings, sold his car, and left a note consigning his property to his boyfriend of 3 years, Renee J. That evening, after hours of physical intimacy, they prepared for the act. Bernd consumed a combination of sleeping pills and cough syrup, reportedly to dull the pain. Maiwes first attempted to bite off Bernd's, but failed. Using a sharper kitchen knife, he successfully amputated it. Bernd screamed in pain, but was reportedly disappointed that the sensation wasn't as intense as he had imagined. The pair attempted to eat the severed organ, first raw, then cooked with spices and Bernd's own fat, but it was overcooked and inedible. Eventually, it was fed to Maiwes' dog. Bernd, losing blood rapidly, lay in a bathtub for hours. Maiwes checked on him periodically, at one point reading a Star Trek novel in another room. Bernd slipped in and out of consciousness, his condition worsening. In the early morning hours, he collapsed after trying to stand. Believing Bernd might be dead, Maiwes tied him to a table and began the dismemberment. Upon reviewing video footage later, Maiwes realized Bernd may have still been breathing during the initial stages. Eventually, Maiwes stabbed Bernd in the throat, ending his life. Over the following months, Maiwes consumed approximately 20 kilograms of Bernd's flesh, storing body parts under pizza boxes in his freezer, and burying bones in his garden. He claimed he had assimilated parts of Bernd, and even believed his memory and skills had improved as a result. Bernd's disappearance initially went unnoticed. His boyfriend was the only one who cared enough to file a missing person report. He did so on March 12th, but there were no immediate leads. It wasn't until over a year later, July 2002, that a university student stumbled upon one of Meiwei's new online ads and contacted authorities. Meiwei was arrested in December 2002. Police discovered remains and a massive cache of media storage, including the now infamous 4-hour videotape documenting the events of that night. Meiwei admitted to the killing, asserting that it had been consensual. His case shocked the world and challenged legal frameworks in Germany, where cannibalism was not explicitly illegal. He was eventually convicted of murder and disturbing the peace of the dead. As for Bernd, he was buried quietly outside Berlin in a private ceremony, attended only by close friends, his partner, and law enforcement. His life, marked by early trauma and emotional isolation, ended in a horrifying tragedy that continues to haunt public consciousness. On May 13, 2008, a routine afternoon in Cranbrook, British Columbia, turned into an unimaginable tragedy. A young man's life was ended in a freak, almost incomprehensible accident, capturing international attention and leaving a community and a family shattered. Isaiah Otieno was a 23-year-old Kenyan student studying business at the College of the Rockies. The son of Dalmas Otieno, Kenya's then Minister for Public Service, Isaiah had arrived in Canada 2 years prior. At 6'9", he was a distinctive figure in the small town of Cranbrook. Known for his intelligence, leadership, and ambition, he was working toward a future in business or tourism with aspirations to one day return home and help lead Kenya's growth. Despite facing challenges in a community not used to cultural diversity, Isaiah charmed those around him with his warm presence and entrepreneurial drive. He worked as a bouncer, studied diligently, and formed close friendships, building a life far from home. It was May 13, 2008, and Isaiah was walking to the post office, planning to mail documents related to his lost passport. He had spoken to his father on the telephone just an hour earlier. Everything was supposed to be fine, routine. But what followed was a catastrophe that no one could have foreseen. As Isaiah walked, a Bell 206 Jet Ranger helicopter, chartered by BC Hydro and operated by Bighorn Helicopters, was conducting a routine patrol to survey power lines in a nearby subdivision. On board were pilot Edward Heeb, 57, and BC Hydro employees Dirk Rosenboom, 45, and Robert Lehman, 37. Witnesses later reported that the helicopter began flying low and appeared to struggle, circling a local church before plummeting toward the ground. In those final seconds, the pilot attempted to steer the craft clear of homes, ultimately descending into 10th Street South, directly onto Isaiah. Isaiah was struck without warning. Witnesses said the aircraft hit him and dragged his body along the pavement before erupting in flames. Many believed he was wearing headphones and listening to music, which may have prevented him from hearing the sputtering aircraft or the frantic attempts by others to warn him. Some said that if he had stepped just a few feet to the side, he might have survived, but he never saw it coming. The crash killed everyone instantly. The helicopter burst into flames, leaving debris, scorched pavement, and thick smoke in its wake. Those nearby rushed to help. One man even tried to smother the flames on Isaiah's body with his shirt, but it was too late. In the aftermath, the town was gripped by grief. The same grief reached across continents. Isaiah's family, including his parents and Kenya's High Commissioner to Canada, traveled to Cranbrook. A memorial service was held at the College of the Rockies, where staff and students remembered Isaiah as a bright, promising young man, a quiet giant. His father, devastated, called for a thorough investigation and appropriate compensation, though he acknowledged that nothing could replace the loss of his son. The Transportation Safety Board began an intensive investigation. With no flight data recorder on the helicopter, inspectors focused on the engine, which remained mostly intact despite the fire. Engine failure was quickly suspected, though determining the precise cause proved challenging. Isaiah's left behind a silence where ambition and hope once lived, a hole in a family, and a question that still lingers. How could something so random, so devastating happen to someone simply walking down the street? In 2013, a tragic and highly unusual incident occurred at Lake Shestakov in Belarus. A 60-year-old fisherman from Brest died after a sudden and violent encounter with an animal that people usually have no reason to fear. It was one of the rarest fatal animal attacks ever recorded in the region. The man was on a casual outing with friends, unaware that a brief attempt to capture a photo of a wild animal would cost him his life. The 60-year-old fisherman, whose name was not released at the request of his family, had traveled with 2 friends to the lake located west of the capital of Belarus, Minsk. A passionate outdoorsman, he enjoyed fishing trips. That day, as they drove toward the lake, they spotted a beaver along the roadside. Curious and seemingly unafraid, the animal lingered near the water's edge. The man stopped the car and approached the beaver, camera in hand. Attempting to get closer, he reached toward it, possibly trying to grab it for a better shot. Instead of fleeing, the beaver did something no one could have foreseen. The animal lashed out. With shocking force, it bit into the man's thigh. The beaver's razor-sharp incisors tore into soft tissue and sliced through the femoral artery, a major blood vessel critical for survival. Blood surged from the wound, quickly soaking the man's clothes and pooling at his feet. His friends acted immediately, trying to stop the bleeding with makeshift bandages, but the injury was devastating. Despite their frantic efforts, the bleeding could not be controlled. They rushed him to the nearest medical facility, a small clinic in the village of Ostromachevo. But by the time they arrived, the man had lost too much blood. He was pronounced dead on arrival. The attending doctor, Leonti Sulim, later photographed the horrific wound, describing it as unlike anything he had ever seen. The attack was the first and only recorded human death caused by a beaver in Belarus. Beavers are not generally considered dangerous to humans. The Eurasian beaver, common in Belarus, can grow to around 1 meter in length and weigh up to 30 kilograms. Their powerful front teeth, evolved for gnawing through wood, are capable of inflicting serious injuries. While attacks are rare, they can occur when the animal feels threatened or is infected with rabies. Beavers are territorial and may react aggressively if they perceive an intrusion, particularly during spring when young are driven out to establish new territory. Wildlife experts later suggested the attacking beaver may have been rabid, as its bold, aggressive behavior was abnormal. The fatality came amid a surge in beaver-related incidents in Belarus. Once nearly extinct in Europe, beavers had rebounded, with the Belarusian population reaching around 80,000 by 2013. The increase led to more frequent encounters with humans, often near towns, schools, and homes. Emergency services had even begun responding to reports of aggressive beavers by driving them away with fire hoses. The man's death sparked both grief and caution. Experts stressed that such attacks remain exceedingly rare, but also acknowledged that human encroachment into natural habitats raises the risk of conflict. This incident stands as a much-needed reminder of how even seemingly benign wildlife can become deadly under the right, or rather wrong, circumstances. As a surfer, Mikala Jones seemed untouchable. When news of his sudden death began spreading in July 2023, the world of the sport was thoroughly shaken. A pioneer in capturing the beauty of barreling waves from within, Mikala died while doing what he loved most, riding waves off the remote Mentawai Islands of Indonesia. Though experienced and careful, the remote conditions and the nature of the accident proved fatal. Born in Kailua, Hawaii, Mikala began surfing at a young age and quickly rose through the ranks of amateur competitions, winning 2 national championships. His talent and passion took him to surf breaks across the globe: Tahiti, Fiji, South Africa, and the Galapagos. In the early 2000s, he moved to Bali with his wife Emma and their growing family, eventually splitting time between Indonesia and Hawaii. More than just a competitive surfer, Mikala became renowned for his artistic eye. He pioneered first-person surf photography, eventually becoming known for jaw-dropping GoPro footage that offered a window into the tube of the wave, a perspective that captivated the global surf community. On the morning of July 9, 2023, while staying at the Aware Resort in North Sapporo with his family, Mikala went out to surf one of the region's celebrated but isolated breaks. Around 9:15 a.m., he suffered a freak accident. While the exact mechanics remain uncertain, reports indicate that he sustained a 10-centimeter wound to his left groin, likely caused by the fin of his surfboard. The cut severed his femoral artery, a critical blood vessel that supplies blood to the leg. According to medical experts, such an injury can cause a person to bleed out in minutes without immediate medical intervention. Due to the remoteness of the location and limited access to emergency care, McCalla succumbed to his injuries before help could arrive. The surfing community was devastated. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe. His daughter Isabella confirmed the news on Instagram, expressing disbelief and sorrow while honoring his passion and spirit. She shared photos of their time together and thanked him for the life lessons and love he gave. Her message was filled with raw grief, but also pride in who her father was, a man who died doing what he cherished most. McCalla's death triggered an outpouring of emotion from friends, fans, and fellow surfers. Surfing legend Mick Fanning described him as an explorer, a pioneer, and above all, a devoted father and husband. Renowned surf photographer Brian Beelman remembered him as an incredible artist and a beautiful soul. He remarked on how much McCalla had achieved in his 44 years, both in his career and personal life. Throughout his career, McCalla contributed profoundly to the art of surf photography. He wasn't content to be filmed. He wanted to document the experience himself. Starting in the 1990s, he mounted cameras to his board and eventually adopted GoPro technology to create immersive 360-degree imagery from inside waves. One photo, featured on the cover of the Surfer's Journal, was praised by experts as one of the most technically and artistically perfect surf photographs ever taken. McCalla is survived by his wife Emma, daughters Bella and Violet, his father Dr. John Jones, an older sister, and 2 younger brothers. His mother passed away in 2011. Despite the immense sorrow following his death, McCalla's legacy lives on in the waves he rode, the art he created, and the lives he touched. On a quiet Monday morning in March 2015, an Easter tradition rooted in love and remembrance took a devastating turn. At St. Joseph's Cemetery in Throop, Pennsylvania, a man lost his life in a tragic and deeply unusual accident that has since reverberated through the local community. What began as a peaceful visit to honor a loved one ended in unimaginable heartbreak. Stephen Wojtak, 74, was a devoted husband and respected member of the Scranton community. Born in Throop, he was the son of the late John and Catherine Rabel Wojtak, but it was his grandmother, Johanna Wojtak, who raised him, a woman he considered his mother. Stephen graduated from Throop High School and served in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. Before retiring, he worked as a chef at the Scranton State School for the Deaf, where his kindness and dedication left a lasting impression. A devout Catholic, he served as a Eucharistic minister, usher, and altar server at Mary Mother of God Parish at Holy Rosary
Mother of
Church.
Alexander.
He was a former member of the Green Ridge Lions Club and found joy in golf and gardening. Alongside his wife Lucy, whom he had been married to for 46 years, Stephen lived a life marked by quiet devotion to his faith, family, and community. Each year, Stephen and Lucy visited St. Joseph's Cemetery multiple times, including during Easter, to tend to family graves. Their visits were acts of quiet reverence. On this particular Monday in 2015, they continued their ritual of tying a wooden cross to the headstone of Stephen's mother-in-law. As Stephen knelt at the front of the monument and Lucy worked from behind, tragedy struck. Without warning, the granite headstone, estimated to weigh between 300 and 600 pounds, toppled forward. The soft, thawing spring soil beneath it had shifted, likely causing the base to become unstable. Stephen was struck in the head and crushed beneath the stone. Lucy, just feet away, could only watch in horror. Her cries for help drew the attention of cemetery caretaker Ed Kubelis, who was nearby. Kubelis rushed to the scene but was unable to lift the stone. He immediately contacted emergency services. Despite the swift response of police and coroner officials, it was too late. Stephen died at the scene from his injuries. Authorities and first responders remained at the cemetery for several hours. The incident was ruled a tragic accident, and police emphasized that such events, while rare, can occur when the ground thaws and shifts in early spring. Patrolman Scott Romanchik explained that weather-related changes and the deterioration of adhesives holding headstones can lead to instability. Kubelis noted that stones occasionally tip over under these conditions, especially in older cemeteries. The community response was one of profound sorrow. Bishop Joseph C. Banbera of the Diocese of Scranton described the incident as unimaginable, a stark reminder of how quickly life can change. The Wojtak's consistent presence at the cemetery had not gone unnoticed. Their annual visits, prayers, and decorations were quiet acts of devotion that spoke volumes about their character and values. Stephen's funeral was held at Mary, Mother of God Parish, where he had served so faithfully. He was laid to rest in the same cemetery where his life ended so suddenly. He is survived by his wife Lucy, a niece, an aunt, and several cousins. He was also preceded in death by his beloved grandmother and a brother. What happened that day was the sudden loss of a man whose life was built on service, humility, and love. His death, marked by both its shocking nature and the poignancy of its setting, left a lasting impact on all who knew him.
That's so unfortunate. I've never lost an impact. My mood is so down, I'm excited as a bean. Oh, so I'm gonna ping you so close, cause in the beanie. Oh, it's Monday, so it's floss day. Anyway. Should probably get ready for bed soon. Oh, dear me. Should probably get ready for bed soon. It's already midnight, it's getting late. Roy Williams, he committed suicide and he's hanging himself. It's your national plan.
Helicopters are built to lift off from almost anywhere, but when they fail, they fall hard and fast. In this video, we're looking at 5 real helicopter crashes that ended in the most disturbing ways possible. Each story starts with a normal flight and ends in chaos, confusion, and death. These are accidents you'll never forget.
One helicopter. Yeah, one helicopter crash.
It was April 10, 2025 in New York City. Agustin Escobar, an executive from Spain, had just arrived in the United States with his wife, Merce Montal, and their 3 children, ages 4, 8, and 10. They were there to celebrate a special occasion. One of their daughters was turning 9 the next day, and to mark the trip, the family planned to explore the city and take a helicopter tour over Manhattan. They had landed in New York just hours earlier from Barcelona, and booked the tour through New York Helicopter, a company that offered short sightseeing flights over the city. The plan was simple. See the skyline, the Statue of Liberty, and the George Washington Bridge from above. At 2:59 p.m., the helicopter lifted off from the Wall Street heliport with 6 people on board. Agustin, Merce, their 3 kids, and the pilot. At first, everything went smoothly. The aircraft flew along the Manhattan shoreline before heading north toward the bridge. Visibility was decent, though the weather was a bit rough. There were wind gusts up to 25 miles per hour, and light rain had started to fall. At 3:15 p.m., something went terribly wrong. The helicopter suddenly lost control near the George Washington Bridge. Witnesses said they heard a loud noise described as either a sonic boom or a rapid popping sound, and then saw the aircraft break apart mid-air. The main rotor blades had detached, and the tail boom had separated from the rest of the aircraft. It fell quickly into the Hudson River, just off the coast of Jersey City near Pier 40. A video of the incident later surfaced, showing the rotor spinning away and the tail breaking off. Experts said this likely pointed to a serious mechanical failure. With the rotor gone, the helicopter had no chance of recovery. It spun violently as it dropped, with no control surfaces left to steer or slow it down. One witness said the helicopter looked like it had no wings or tail as it fell. Another saw smoke trailing from the craft as it spiraled downward. The crash was over in seconds. Emergency crews responded fast, but the outcome was devastating. All 6 people on board, Agustin, Merce, their 3 children, and the 36-year-old pilot, were confirmed dead. 4 were declared at the scene, and the other 2 passed away shortly after being taken to the hospital. Shortly before the crash, the pilot had contacted the heliport, saying he was running low on fuel and planned to return within 3 minutes. But 20 minutes later, the helicopter hadn't come back, and by then the failure had already happened. Authorities later confirmed that the helicopter had been in the air for just 16 minutes before it went down. The crash turned what was meant to be a joyful family outing into something unimaginable. Agustin Escobar was the global chief executive officer for rail infrastructure at Siemens Mobility and had worked at the company for 27 years. First held a leadership role at Siemens Energy. The family had planned the trip around a business visit and extended it for a short vacation. Just a few hours into that vacation, everything changed. Michael Roth, the chief executive officer of New York Helicopter, said it was the worst accident he had seen in 3 decades. He confirmed the pilot's fuel request and acknowledged that the video clearly showed the helicopter falling without its main rotor. The Federal Aviation Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board opened investigations into the crash. They were looking into mechanical issues and possible flight errors. But the cause was still